Hey everybody, Brendan here, and welcome back to a new video. Today we're going to be covering game number 5 of the Ontario Open. So far it's been a bit of a lackluster event, especially compared to my last one where sometimes I'm just getting good positions and then blowing them. That was kind of the case the whole time so far, and unfortunately I wish I could say something was different this game, but it wasn't. This time I am playing against Ishu, who is 2150, and let's get into it. I am playing with the white pieces here. I play e4, and we see a Caro-Kann, and I was expecting this. I play the advance this time. Normally I play knight c3, but I knew that my opponent kind of played a weird move here, very common. After bishop d3, they never ever take on d3. They always play something else, either knight h6 or like e6 or something weird. And yeah, it was the case here as well. Queen c8 was played. So I was pretty happy with my opening already because any move other than bishop takes d3 just gives white a clear advantage, and that's the case here. We see knight e2, g6. Which is definitely dubious because the bishop doesn't really want to develop to somewhere like g7. I think the idea for them was to overprotect it with g6, but again, I don't really think that was the right plan. And then I take on f5 because after it takes on f5, I had knight g3. But knight g3 was maybe not the best try. Maybe castling was better. And just leaving the queen on f5 because it's not really stable. They would love to play a move like e6, but they can't really do that until they move back. And knight g3 is a good move, but maybe there's more useful. For example, castling is more useful, where they might have to play queen d7 or queen c8 anyways. But yeah, I played knight g3 instead, and they could have thrown this little number in queen g4, which is really interesting. They end up going back, which is also, again, just a mistake. But this queen g4 is very, very intriguing because I don't really want to trade queens here. So what do? Turns out f3 actually works, surprisingly. And now queen d7 or queen c8. Queen d7, I think, is just the better choice, though. The queen on c8 is very, very strange. But instead, what if you take the knight? Well, after king f1, turns out the queen's actually just trapped. So white gets an edge from that, which is very interesting. But queen c8, now we see knight to d2, knight to a6, knight to f3, e6, castles, knight h6, and bishop g5. So the good point of this h4 move in these Caro-Kann structures is that you're trying to take advantage of the weak dark squares around black's king here. And this is the exact purpose of bishop g5. Bishop e7, which makes sense because it's hard to find any other move for black. But of course, after this, it's clear white has a significant, actually a winning advantage at this point. Knight c7, knight e2, knight e8, and knight f4. All my minor pieces, both my knights are perfectly placed. And now I should go for something more. Knight gf5, and then I played, knight g7, g3, and then knight gf5 here was played. And here I played a very stupid move. I thought calculation-wise it worked out. Knight takes e6. Generally, I don't like trading two knights for a rook, but I thought that his king safety was significantly compromised. We'll get into that shortly. There's two moves that are interesting here, actually a few of them. One is a4, and then maybe like a rook c1 and then c4. This is very interesting. Also, rook c1 is very interesting here as well. Just going for c4, opening the position where their king's not really happy. And another move that was very interesting to me was just c4 immediately. This is dubious, though, as after d takes c4, rook c1, and b5, b3, black is fine, unless they blunder here. But it's so easy to blunder and do something like takes. And here, there's actually just a knockout that It took me just like half a second to see, because it's not really that wild of a move, but it's a very cool one. D5, and that's just aimed to exploit the pin here. And for example, after e takes, just knight takes d5 with check. Everything opens up. Doesn't even matter what we sacrifice on the queen side, because the king is just going to be checkmated soon. And if they do something else, like take on a2, then we can take on c6, play d6 check, and then play rook c7. And this is not only a clear edge, but this is just clearly winning at this point, just because we have the 7th rank, the attack is still continuing, and we've only sacrificed, 2 pawns for it. This pawn's pretty weak, honestly, and should be picked up. Then we're only down 1 pawn for all of this pressure against the king. So instead I took on e6, and my idea here was that after f takes e6, knight takes g6, king d7, knight takes h8, queen takes h8, and queen takes h5 here. I thought that I had enough pressure. So what happened is I traded my 2 knights for one of their rooks and 3 pawns. Normally you try to get 1 pawn for it, but I got 3. And I knew that I was giving up the d4 pawn here, so I thought at the end of the day it would have been 2 pawns instead of just 1. Plus, again, king safety. That's why I went for this. Generally, I don't like making those moves, and generally I don't at all. But here I thought it was an interesting try. I think just like strategically, or just like looking at things visually, it's very stupid actually, because the rook on h8 was doing nothing. My knights on g5 and f4 were extremely strong. And now black has some chances to actually get activity for the first time this millennia. So they take on d4, and I play c4. I think that's natural. I calculated up to this point of playing c4, and I think I only looked at knight hf5, which is a little weird because it obviously allows queen f7 check at the very least. So it'd be kind of strange if that move were played. Obviously, taking here is a bit riskier, just because now maybe I can try to start opening the position a bit, or forcing some sort of c5, which even at the end of the day doesn't even look so bad for them. But this was my concept, and from afar it looked a lot more promising than it even does now, which is unfortunate. Generally, even still, I don't make these types of sacrifices. I really try to avoid them, but I don't know what my problem was here, but I was really playing like kind of an idiot. Yeah, so knight df5, c takes d5, and they played c takes d5, which is actually a huge mistake. They should take with the e pawn, because they need to close the c file. So c takes d5 is a mistake in return. I ended up playing queen e2 with the idea of using like the geometry here to play queen b5 and try to puncture the light squares, and of course they respond with a6. But another move was just rook fe1. And the whole point is here, if something like rook g8, now I start taking over the c file here, which is actually very interesting. So rook c3, and all of a sudden there's a lot of activity on the c file. And I think the important thing to note here is that my queen is already developed. There's no use of playing a move like queen e2 and just making my queen worse. So that didn't really make too much sense. They played a6. I play rook a to c1 now. We see knight to d4. I go queen back to h5. I didn't really see a better move, unfortunately. And this was aimed to prevent the move knight f5, because now I have this check. And this is actually kind of annoying to look at. Looked a little bit more promising. The whole point is if knight e7, then maybe at the very least I can play a move like rook c7 check. That's just like visually the first thing I'm looking at here. And this knight might actually just drop through tactics. There's like queen d6 or queen c5 checks in the position. But now it's a lot messier than black would like. But queen g7 was played. Rook f to e1. Knight h to f5. Rook to c3 now. Knight to c6. Rook e to c1. Rook to h8. Queen g5. Just setting one more trap. They took on e5, which is correct. If they take here, this is actually a lot less clear. Because you'd like to take this pawn, but now feels like there's a lot more activity. And it's a lot less clear what's going on. And I think there's full compensation in this position, and white's totally fine. But instead, queen takes e5. I played g4, trying to make it messy. Hopefully, you know, they do something weird, but of course they just take on h4. Queen takes e5. Knight, rook c7 check. Just going for a little bit of activity. The big difference here is my king side's a little bit weaker than this variation. Like this variation, my king is actually quite safe. But in the game, it's not as safe, unfortunately. If I had the pawn on g3 and a pawn on g5 instead, this is actually perfectly fine. But knight takes g4, rook b6 check, rook c7 check. I played rook c6, trying to go for activity. I knew I was like just worse, if not losing already at this point, but just kept playing on for just a few more moves. Knight, king to f5. Rook takes a6, rook h2 check, king g3, and after knight e2 check, I ended up resigning. This was a very unfortunate game. I thought my opening was just very well played. And yeah, I just throw away my huge advantage to like a trade that didn't really benefit me anyways. Like if I just like, I knew it was risky, but I don't know like what was going on in my mind, honestly, to entertain knight takes e6 too seriously, just because like visually it looks interesting, right? We're taking 3 pawns instead of the normal one when you get the 2 minor pieces versus the rook, and obviously they win 1 back, so we're still up 1 point of material, plus their king is compromised. But generally, yeah, like this variation, it just doesn't make as much sense. So this told me that I needed to work a lot more on my calculation, and that's something I end up doing. I work on my calculation a lot more nowadays to avoid things like this. Because now, you know, if you see a variation like this, it's easy to kind of gamble like I did in this game and in the next game. But instead, gambling's probably not the right choice. You should, you know, actually evaluate properly. And if you don't see anything correct in it, then you shouldn't do it. And deep down, I think I knew that this was incorrect going for it. But I thought like there's a small chance that it actually is, and I didn't want to miss it. But I'd rather miss a chance to like finish the game and still have a huge advantage that I could probably convert anyways, rather than a position where like I just blow it completely and end up losing like I did here. So anyways, that's going to cover it for game number 5, and I will see you in game number 6 of the same tournament, which is the final round. All right, have a good one. Bye-bye.